In the heart of a galaxy far beyond human comprehension, where stars burned with colors unknown to Earth's spectrum and nebulae swirled like cosmic watercolors, there existed a realm untouched by time's linear constraints. This was Allerion, a world of crystalline spires that sang in harmonic resonance with the winds of its atmosphere, a symphony only those attuned could hear. The planets shimmered under twin suns, their light refracting through translucent flora that seemed alive not just in growth but in thought. Rivers of liquid crystal coursed through valleys lined with bioluminescent moss, casting an ethereal glow over every surface they touched. At the pinnacle of this otherworldly civilization stood she who had no name among her people, only titles spoken in reverent tones: Sovereign of Stars, Weaver of Light, Architect of Unity. She was the Alien Queen, though such a term would have been considered crude if translated into any language known to her kind. Her form defied description for those bound by earthly biology. She embodied both grace and power, her essence shifting between states as fluidly as the rivers that carved her domain. Her skin, or what might be called skin, reflected hues unseen elsewhere, a kaleidoscope of iridescent patterns that shifted with her emotions or intentions, communicating without words. Her courtiers served her not out of obligation but from devotion, their own forms equally magnificent yet subordinate in presence. They moved around her like satellites orbiting a radiant star, each action precise, each gesture imbued with meaning. Yet despite their harmony, something lingered beneath the surface, a quiet yearning within the queen herself. For all her wisdom, all her mastery over creation and destruction alike, she remained untouched by curiosity about what lay beyond Allerion's borders. Until now. It began subtly, almost imperceptibly, a ripple in the fabric of space-time, detected by instruments so sensitive they could measure the size of dying stars. At first, it was dismissed as cosmic noise, background radiation left over from some ancient cataclysm. But then came the signal, faint, fragmented, yet unmistakably artificial. It carried no words, no images, only patterns, mathematical sequences that hinted at intelligence. The court buzzed with speculation. Was it a message? A warning? Or perhaps merely a fluke of physics? The alien queen listened, her luminous form pulsating softly as the data streamed into her consciousness. Unlike her advisors, who debated fervently about whether to respond or ignore, she felt no need for deliberation. Something deep within her resonated with the strange transmission, stirring emotions she couldn't, and wouldn't, name. Without hesitation, she commanded her fleet to trace its origin, abandoning centuries of isolationist policy in pursuit of answers. What drove her decision was unclear even to herself. Perhaps it was boredom, a desire to break free from the suffocating perfection of her existence. Or maybe it was something more primal, buried so deeply beneath layers of evolution and refinement that it barely registered as instinct anymore. Whatever the reason, the queen set forth on a journey unlike any undertaken before, not as conqueror or diplomat, but as seeker. As her vessel pierced the veil of Allerion's protective nebula, she gazed outward at the infinite expanse stretching before her. For the first time in millennia, uncertainty flickered across her ever-changing visage. And yet, she did not turn back. The journey through the void was neither swift nor simple. Space bent and twisted under the influence of gravitational anomalies, forcing the Queen's ship to navigate labyrinthine corridors of warped reality. Time itself became malleable, stretching and compressing as they approached the source of the signal. Along the way, her crew encountered phenomena that defied explanation: rogue planets shrouded in perpetual storms, clusters of stars arranged in geometric precision, and vast fields of debris that hummed with residual energy, as though remnants of forgotten civilizations whispered warnings to intruders. For the alien queen, these wonders were both familiar and alien. Her mind processed the information with detached efficiency, cataloging each discovery while maintaining an unspoken distance. Yet, amid the chaos of interstellar travel, something within her stirred, a quiet fascination bordering on obsession. She found herself lingering over sensor readings longer than necessary, tracing constellations with movements too delicate for her usual demeanor. It was as if the universe itself conspired to awaken parts of her long dormant, coaxing forth questions she dared not ask aloud. Then came the moment when the signal grew stronger, its rhythm steady and deliberate, like a heartbeat calling across the cosmos. The coordinates led them to a system unlike any they had seen, a single pale blue orb cradled by a golden star, surrounded by rings of shattered rock and ice. The planet radiated life, its surface teeming with activity visible even from afar. But it was not the world itself that arrested her attention, it was the beings who inhabited it. Through scans and fragmented transmissions, she observed them. Fragile yet resilient creatures, their forms awkward compared to the elegance of her own species, yet imbued with a spark of something indefinable. They built, destroyed, created, and dreamed, all in cycles of breathtaking brevity. Curiosity bloomed within her, sharp and undeniable. These humans, as they called themselves, were chaotic and contradictory, their actions driven by impulses she could scarcely comprehend. Yet there was beauty in their imperfection, a raw vitality that resonated with the part of her she had always sought to suppress. As her ship descended toward the planet's surface, cloaked in shadows cast by their primitive technology, she felt a tremor run through her being, not fear, but anticipation. For the first time in eons, she wondered what it might mean to truly understand another. The descent into Earth's atmosphere proved disorienting, even for one accustomed to traversing the cosmos. The air shimmered with heat as her vessel sliced through invisible barriers, buffeted by forces her kind had long since mastered. Below stretched landscapes both mundane and extraordinary, sprawling cities of steel and glass interspersed with vast tracts of untamed wilderness. The contrast intrigued her, how humanity clung to its creations while simultaneously bowing to nature's dominion. She emerged from her craft cautiously, her form adapting seamlessly to the terrestrial environment. Around her, the air vibrated with unseen energies, radio waves, electrical currents, and the faint hum of countless lives intersecting in ways she struggled to comprehend. Her senses, honed over millennia, strained against the sensory overload. Each sound, each movement carried weight, significance. It was overwhelming, intoxicating. Her first steps on solid ground sent ripples through the nearby foliage, leaves trembling as though aware of her presence. She paused, observing the reaction, her luminous skin reflecting the muted greens and browns of Earth's palette. A small creature darted past her feet, startling her momentarily. Its rapid movements, so different from the measured grace of her own people, fascinated her. She reached out, almost reflexively, but it vanished into the underbrush before contact could be made. Movement caught her eye, a figure approaching through the trees. Her breath hitched, an unfamiliar sensation flooding her being. There he stood, a human male, his form strikingly different from anything she had imagined based on the scans. He moved with a deliberate slowness, his eyes wide with wonder and caution. His clothing was simple, practical, yet it spoke volumes about his culture, threads woven together in patterns that seemed almost symbolic. As he drew closer, she froze, unable to look away. His features were angular, defined by contrasts of shadow and light cast by the dappled sunlight filtering through the canopy above. His gaze met hers, direct and unwavering, sparking a connection that transcended language or understanding. In that moment, she realized the depth of her ignorance about these beings. They were not merely subjects of study or curiosities to be catalogued. They possessed a vitality, a spirit that challenged everything she thought she knew about life and existence. Time seemed to stand still as they regarded one another, the forest around them fading into insignificance. Her pulse quickened, an alien sensation that startled her further. This encounter was supposed to be clinical, detached. Instead, she found herself drawn to him, compelled by an inexplicable pull toward the humanity reflected in his eyes. Every instinct screamed at her to retreat, to maintain the distance her position demanded. Yet, she remained rooted to the spot, captivated by the profound simplicity of his presence. He took another step forward, breaking the spell momentarily. She watched as his lips parted, forming sounds that carried no immediate meaning but resonated deeply nonetheless. The cadence of his voice, rich and warm, stirred emotions she had never experienced. Her response came automatically, a series of melodic tones that danced through the air between them. To her surprise, he smiled, a gesture so inherently human yet universally understood. It softened his features, inviting trust rather than fear. They communicated haltingly at first, bridging the chasm between their worlds with gestures and expressions. Each exchange revealed more about him. His curiosity mirroring her own. His courage evident in the way he faced the unknown without flinching. She learned of his name, spoken softly amidst the rustling leaves, and repeated it silently, savoring the syllables like a newfound treasure. Yet, as moments passed, unease crept into her awareness. The implications of this meeting weighed heavily on her shoulders. What would her people think? How would they react to her fascination with a being so fundamentally different? Doubt gnawed at her resolve, threatening to unravel the fragile bond forming between them. Still, she pushed forward, driven by a desire to know more, to understand not just him, but the essence of humanity itself. The revelation struck her with the force of a supernova, an epiphany born from the collision of two vastly different worlds. As they stood amidst the verdant embrace of Earth's forests, she realized that her fascination stemmed not merely from his physical presence but from the intangible qualities he embodied. Humanity, in all its flawed brilliance, represented potential, a canvas upon which possibilities were painted with reckless abandon. Their mortality lent urgency to their actions. Their fragility underscored the preciousness of existence. In him, she saw reflections of her own suppressed desires, the yearning for connection, for meaning beyond duty and legacy. Her thoughts spiraled inward, confronting truths she had long avoided. Here, in this fleeting encounter, she glimpsed what her people had sacrificed in their pursuit of perfection. Order had bred stagnation. Unity had smothered individuality. The vibrant chaos of human emotion, their capacity for joy, sorrow, love, and loss, stood in stark contrast to the sterile harmony of her realm. For the first time, she questioned whether her civilization's path was truly the pinnacle of evolution or merely a cage adorned with illusions of grandeur. But doubt was a dangerous companion, whispering insidious fears into her mind. Could she truly bridge the chasm between their worlds? Would her people see this interaction as enlightenment or betrayal? The weight of leadership bore down on her, a mantle she had worn effortlessly until now. Her every choice carried consequences not just for herself but for countless others whose fates intertwined with hers. The realization paralyzed her momentarily, the enormity of her predicament pressing against her chest like a tangible force. And yet, despite the turmoil within, she found solace in his gaze. There was no judgment there, only curiosity tempered by kindness. He extended a hand tentatively, palm open, a gesture of peace, of trust. She hesitated, torn between the call of destiny and the pull of caution. Her fingers twitched, yearning to meet his halfway, to feel the warmth of his skin against hers. But the chasm yawned wide, not just between their species but within her own soul. Time stretched taut, each second laden with unspoken possibilities. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath, awaiting her decision. She closed her eyes briefly, seeking clarity amidst the storm of emotions. When she opened them again, determination flickered in her iridescent depths. Whatever the cost, whatever the risk, she could not turn away. Not now, not when the universe had placed this singular moment before her. Just as she resolved to bridge the gap between them, a sudden disturbance shattered the fragile equilibrium of their encounter. A low rumble reverberated through the forest, shaking leaves from their branches and sending animals scurrying into shadows. The human man turned sharply, his expression shifting from curiosity to alarm. He muttered something under his breath, words laced with urgency, then gestured for her to follow him deeper into the woods. Confusion rippled across her luminous form, but instinct compelled her to obey. She moved silently behind him, her senses attuned to every nuance of their surroundings. As they pressed forward, the air grew heavier, charged with an energy that felt both foreign and familiar. It wasn't until they reached a clearing bathed in unnatural light that the source of the disturbance revealed itself. A sleek, metallic craft hovering just above the ground, its surface pulsating faintly like a living organism. Her heart, or what served as one, skipped a beat. This was no human technology. Its design bore none of the crude symmetry characteristic of Earth's machinery. Instead, it exuded an elegance eerily reminiscent of her own people's creations. Yet there was something off about it, an unsettling irregularity in its patterns that made her skin prickle with unease. From within the craft emerged figures cloaked in darkened armor, their movements fluid yet mechanical. They were not of her kind, nor entirely alien either. Their forms suggested hybridization, an amalgamation of species stitched together by forces unknown. One of them stepped forward, raising a device that emitted a high-pitched whine. Without warning, a beam shot out, striking the man beside her. He cried out, collapsing to his knees as tendrils of light wrapped around him, siphoning something intangible from his very essence. Fury surged through her, raw and primal. Whatever these beings were, whatever purpose drove them, She would not allow harm to come to him, not after everything this moment had awakened within her. With a swift motion, she unleashed a pulse of energy from her core, disrupting the beam and scattering the attackers momentarily. The armored figures hesitated, their heads tilting in unison as if recalibrating their strategy. The fallen man struggled to rise, clutching at his chest as though trying to reclaim what had been taken. His eyes met hers, wide with pain and confusion, and in that instant, she saw vulnerability laid bare. It struck her then. Humanity's greatest strength lay not in its resilience or adaptability but in its willingness to fight despite knowing defeat might be inevitable. And so, she stood firm, shielding him even as dread coiled tighter around her being. One of the armored figures spoke, its voice distorted yet hauntingly familiar. "You have strayed too far, Sovereign," it intoned, addressing her directly. "Your presence here violates the accord. Surrender now, or face annihilation." Shock coursed through her veins. The Accord, a treaty forged millennia ago among advanced civilizations, prohibited interference with younger species deemed unworthy of contact. She had dismissed it as irrelevant when setting forth on this journey, confident in her ability to navigate consequences. But now, faced with enforcers whose allegiance remained unclear, doubt crept back in. Who had sent them? Were they agents of her own council, dispatched to retrieve or eliminate her? Or did they represent some other power, one that viewed humanity as more than mere primitives? Before she could respond, the man pushed himself upright, staggering toward her. "Don't listen to them," he rasped, his voice trembling but resolute. "If you're leaving, take me with you." His plea caught her off guard. Humanity's capacity for trust never ceased to astonish her, especially given how little time they'd shared. Yet his words carried weight, anchoring her resolve. She couldn't abandon him, not only because of the connection forming between them but because doing so would mean surrendering to fear, betraying everything this meeting represented. With a surge of determination, she activated a hidden mechanism embedded within her form, releasing a cascade of radiant energy that enveloped both herself and the man. The world around them dissolved into shimmering fragments, replaced by the cold sterility of her vessel's interior. Alarms blared as the ship ascended rapidly, pursued by the mysterious craft. Through the viewport, she watched as beams of destructive force tore through the atmosphere, narrowly missing their hull. Inside, the man collapsed against a console, breathing heavily. His gaze darted around the chamber, taking in the alien architecture with a mixture of awe and terror. "Where are we going?" he asked, his voice barely audible over the din. "To safety," she replied, though uncertainty lingered beneath her words. Safety was relative when pursued by forces beyond comprehension. More importantly, she couldn't shake the feeling that their escape marked only the beginning of a far greater conflict, one that threatened not just their lives but the delicate balance between worlds. As the ship hurtled through space, she accessed encrypted channels, seeking answers. What she discovered chilled her to her core. The signal that had drawn her to Earth hadn't originated from humanity at all. It had been planted deliberately, a lure designed to expose vulnerabilities in the Accord. Someone, or something, wanted her here, wanted her to witness humanity's potential firsthand. And now, whoever controlled those armored figures sought to exploit that connection, using her actions as leverage against her people. Betrayal burned bitter on her tongue. She had always believed herself above manipulation, immune to schemes woven by lesser minds. Yet here she was, ensnared in a web spun across galaxies, her choices dictated by forces she barely understood. Worse still, she realized she wasn't the only target. The man beside her had become collateral, a pawn in a game neither of them fully grasped. Her thoughts spiraled, grappling with implications too vast to comprehend. If the Accord fell, countless worlds would be plunged into chaos, their fates decided by powers indifferent to life's diversity. But abandoning humanity meant condemning them to exploitation, or worse. For all their flaws, they deserved a chance to shape their destiny, free from external control. She glanced at the man, who sat quietly now, staring out at the endless void beyond the viewport. There was no fear in his posture, only quiet resolve. In that moment, she understood why fate had brought them together. Not because she could save him, but because he might hold the key to saving them all. The decision crystallized within her, sharp and undeniable. She would defy the Accord, challenge those who sought to enforce it, and forge a new path, one defined not by isolation or domination but by unity born of mutual understanding. But first, she needed allies. Allies willing to risk everything for a cause larger than themselves. Turning away from the viewport, she extended a hand toward the man, her iridescent form glowing softly. "We must find others like you," she said, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside. "Others brave enough to stand against the tide." He looked at her for a long moment before placing his hand in hers. Together, they sealed an alliance that transcended species, time, and space, an alliance destined to reshape the cosmos. The ship surged forward, its engines humming with a newfound intensity as it carved through the fabric of space. The man's hand remained in hers, his grip firm despite the uncertainty etched across his face. She felt the weight of his trust pressing against her consciousness, a responsibility she had never anticipated but now carried willingly. For all her power and wisdom, she knew that this alliance would demand more from her than any battle or negotiation ever had. Her first move was to access the archives embedded within her vessel, a repository of knowledge spanning millennia. Within its depths lay maps of uncharted territories, records of civilizations long forgotten, and cryptic references to those who operated outside the Accord. As data streamed before her eyes, she sifted through layers of information, searching for signs of resistance. If there were others defying the rigid structures imposed by higher powers, they might hold the key to unraveling the forces arrayed against them. The man watched silently as streams of alien symbols danced across translucent screens. "You're looking for help," he said finally, his voice tinged with both awe and trepidation. "Yes," she replied, her tone measured yet resolute. "But not just any help. Those who understand what is at stake, and are willing to fight for it." He nodded slowly, absorbing her words. "And if we don't find anyone?" Her luminous form flickered briefly, betraying a moment of vulnerability. "Then we become the resistance ourselves." His response surprised her. Instead of recoiling at the enormity of such a task, he straightened, determination hardening his features. "Then teach me," he said simply. "Teach me how to fight, not just for Earth, but for whatever comes next." Her chest tightened, an unfamiliar sensation that felt perilously close to pride. Humanity's capacity for growth, for rising above limitations, continued to astound her. With a nod, she began explaining their course of action, translating complex concepts into terms he could grasp. Together, they charted a path toward an uncertain future, each step bringing them closer to confronting the architects of their predicament. Their journey led them to a remote sector of the galaxy, where stars burned dimly against a backdrop of perpetual twilight. Here, nestled within the shadow of a dying sun, floated a derelict station, a relic of a civilization that had once thrived but now existed only in whispers. Its surface was pockmarked with scars of ancient battles, yet faint lights flickered within, suggesting life, or something resembling it, still lingered inside. As their ship docked, the airlock hissed open, revealing a corridor bathed in eerie green light. The atmosphere was thick with decay, carrying the metallic tang of rust and the faint hum of machinery struggling to function. The man hesitated at the threshold, his instincts screaming caution, but her steady presence reassured him. Side by side, they ventured deeper into the labyrinthine structure. It wasn't long before they encountered inhabitants, beings whose forms defied easy categorization. Some resembled organic machines, their bodies interwoven with circuits and wires. Others appeared almost spectral, their outlines shimmering like heat waves. Despite their diversity, one trait united them: defiance. These were outcasts, rebels who had rejected the constraints of the Accord and paid dearly for it. One figure emerged from the shadows, taller than the rest, its exoskeleton glinting with iridescent hues. It regarded them with multifaceted eyes, its gaze piercing yet devoid of malice. "Why have you come here?" it asked, its voice a chorus of overlapping tones. She stepped forward, her posture unwavering. "We seek allies against those who enforce the Accord. We believe there is another way, a future where species can coexist without fear of interference or control." The being tilted its head, considering her words. "Many have sought refuge here, hoping to escape the enforcer's reach. Few have dared challenge them directly." Pause, heavy with implication. "What makes you think you can succeed?" Her answer came without hesitation. Because I've seen what humanity offers, not perfection, but potential. Because I refuse to let fear dictate the fate of countless worlds. The room fell silent, tension crackling in the air. Then, unexpectedly, the being chuckled, a sound both mechanical and melodic. Your conviction burns brightly, Sovereign. Perhaps too brightly for your own good. But, perhaps not. With that cryptic statement, it gestured for them to follow. They were led to a chamber filled with holographic projections depicting star systems, trade routes, and fleets of ships. At the center stood a map highlighting regions marked as neutral zones, areas beyond the Accord's jurisdiction. The being explained that these zones served as havens for those seeking freedom, though survival required constant vigilance. We cannot join your cause openly, it admitted, but we can provide resources, intelligence, and safe passage. Beyond that, it trailed off, leaving the rest unsaid. Gratitude swelled within her, tempered by the knowledge that alliances forged in desperation often crumbled under pressure. Still, it was a start, a foothold in a war waged across galaxies. Back aboard her ship, they reviewed the intel provided by their newfound contacts. Among the data was a name whispered with reverence and dread, the Architect. This entity, shrouded in mystery, was rumored to orchestrate events behind the scenes, manipulating civilizations like pieces on a cosmic chessboard. If anyone held the answers to their questions, if anyone could dismantle the Accord, it was the Architect. Locating the Architect proved maddeningly difficult. References to its existence were fragmented, contradictory, and often dismissed as myth. Yet one clue stood out, a signal emanating from a black hole's event horizon, pulsing in patterns eerily similar to the transmission that had drawn her to Earth. Against all logic, they set a course for the anomaly, braving gravitational tides that threatened to tear their vessel apart. As they approached, reality itself seemed to warp. Time stretched and contracted, colors bled together, and sounds echoed unnaturally. The man gripped the console tightly, visibly struggling to maintain composure. "What is this place?" he whispered, his voice barely audible over the cacophony. "A nexus," she murmured, her own unease palpable. "A point where dimensions converge. And somewhere within lies the Architect." Suddenly, the ship jolted violently, throwing them both off balance. Alarms blared as external sensors detected movement, something massive emerging from the void. Before either of them could react, a colossal form materialized, dwarfing their craft. It was neither machine nor organism but something in between, its surface shifting constantly, refracting light into impossible patterns. A voice boomed, resonating not just in their ears but in their very souls. "You dare trespass here, Sovereign? You risk everything. For what? A fleeting connection? An ideal?" Her resolve hardened. "I risk everything because ideals matter. Because connections define us. Because I will not stand idly by while lives are extinguished in the name of order." For a moment, silence reigned. Then, unexpectedly, the entity laughed, a sound that vibrated through every atom of their beings. "Very well," it said, its tone shifting to one of intrigue. "Prove your conviction. Face the trials ahead, and perhaps we shall see if you are worthy of change." With that, the ship was released, flung back into normal space with dizzying speed. When they regained their bearings, they found themselves orbiting a planet unlike any they'd seen before, a world teeming with life yet untouched by civilization. On its surface awaited challenges designed to test their resolve, their unity, and their belief in a better future. As they prepared to descend, the man turned to her, his expression a mixture of fear and determination. "Whatever happens down there," he said, "we face it together." Her iridescent form pulsed softly, a silent affirmation. Together, they stepped into the unknown, ready to confront whatever trials lay ahead, and reshape the cosmos in the process. The trials pushed them to their limits, testing not just their strength but their trust in each other. Each challenge revealed deeper truths, about themselves, their bond, and the fragile beauty of coexistence. As they stood victorious amidst the ruins of the final trial, the Architect reappeared, its form shimmering with approval. "You have proven that unity is not weakness," it intoned, "but the seed of infinite possibility." With a wave of its essence, it unraveled the Accord, freeing countless worlds from its constraints. The man and the queen turned to each other, knowing their journey was far from over, but together they had forged hope from chaos. And as their ship ascended once more, bound for stars unknown, they carried with them the promise of a new dawn, for all species, everywhere.